Good morning, everyone. Hello, I am Crystal Hinkle, and I am part of the team here at Syncro. First, just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll take just a couple minutes. I want to introduce our lovely guests for today. So go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead and give us a little intro and what you do for Pax8.
Cool. Thanks, Crystal. Hi, guys. My name is Kevin Gritch. Thanks for having me. I'm a Director of Partner Solutions at Pax8. So I oversee one of our technical teams that's responsible for providing with pre-sales product demonstrations, as well as post-sales implementation walkthroughs, and we even handle some professional services. I'm getting just a little bit of echo still.
I don't hear an echo. Maybe, I don't know if anyone else.
Okay, Adam's got it too. All good.
There is an echo. Okay, let's see here.
Crystal, why don't you just try muting yourself for a sec, and I'll keep. Okay, this sounds good. Everybody can hear me well. I don't hear the echo anymore. Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here, and I love Syncro. If you guys aren't familiar with Pax8, we're actually a cloud software distributor that specifically focuses on the MSP market. So unlike traditional distributors, we don't really provide hardware. We don't provide servers and switches and monitors. We specialize in SaaS applications that really help our partners create the right technology stack. So that could be like an M365 subscription with some security and backup, maybe some Azure infrastructure as a service. So thank you very much for having me. It looks like Adam Jones would like to introduce himself as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Jones. I own Firefly MSP. We're just over 10 years, turned 10 April 1st, and we provide managed IT services to a large number of clients, mainly in Kansas City, but we have markets in San Diego and clients kind of spread throughout the country. We started using the solution we'll talk about today in October, and nothing but good things to say, as you guys will find out as we go through this.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so if I'm unmuted and talking by myself, is the audio okay?
Yes, coming in great.
Okay. All right, so I think what we'll do to just kind of kick this off, I think it's worth mentioning, you know, Pax8 and Syncro have a phenomenal relationship. We've built an amazing integration. And so we've done one of these webinars before where we kind of went really deep into the nitty-gritty of how to set it up, how the products link, how the customers link. And while I think that's really important, probably won't spend a ton of time talking about those specific logistics. I do have a video, and I'll post that in chat too. If you haven't seen it, I can kind of just post those resources. We have a phenomenal KB. Pax8 has a really nice video also that's linked in our KB. And so I think with that said, the purpose today is really just, I guess, having more of a candid conversation on why the integration is so important, and also kind of recognizing the current climate that we're in. We want to be absolutely sensitive, because I will tell you, I talk to folks every day, all day, and you know, some managed service providers are thriving and busier than ever. Some are not. Some are being hit a little bit hard by this COVID situation, and we are sensitive to that. And I think that through this conversation, I think everybody will be able to find some value in this conversation. So I just kind of wanted to preface it with that. So there's a few things that we're going to do today. One being, you know, I think just mentioning the integration and what it is, and I'll kind of explain that. Kevin's going to kind of talk about the current environment, what Pax8 is doing, some, you know, nice cloud services that might really be helpful for you right now. And then we're going to do kind of a live Q&A with Adam. With that said, I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A over here. So if you see me looking to my left, that's what I'm looking at. We use the Q&A, not chat, just it's easier to organize. So if you have questions, whether it's for Adam or Kevin or myself, please don't hesitate to ask those. We're going to try to get to all of our questions. So I think that basically what I'd like to just describe, Kevin's going to go into what Pax8 is in detail, but the main thing is that Pax8 obviously is a cloud service provider, and Syncro is a PSA and an RMM tool. And the lovely thing about the integration is that, as you know, as a managed service provider, things change weekly, monthly, sometimes daily in regards to what number of licenses you're selling of Office 365, for example. Our integration with Pax8 allows you to link your inventory items in Syncro to your Pax8 products. And so as those numbers fluctuate, it just dynamically changes on your reoccurring invoice in Syncro, saving you so much time at the end of the month. It's not a headache to bill anymore. You're not missing billing people. So it's really kind of cutting out that middleman. It's just trying to make your life easier and getting to the things that you need to be doing, protecting your customers' computers, and just being proactive in that way and not having to worry so heavily on billing and just do what you do best. So that's kind of just the backbone of the integration. But I think for now, it's great. I've already, there's already some questions rolling in, but I think that I would love to just hand it over to Kevin and just kind of tell us a little bit more about Pax8 and what kind of products you're seeing and people utilizing right now and what might be helpful to hear about right now.
Yeah, thank you. So if you guys aren't terribly familiar with Pax8, we've been around since I think 2012. John Street is our CEO, who previously founded MX Logic, which was a cloud email security product, similar to like Proofpoint or Reflections. Something that he noticed is selling these cloud-based really products in the channel was challenging. So he became the founder of Pax8 and decided to build this distribution company focused around SaaS applications. And really one of the reasons why Pax8 has been as successful as it has, it really comes down to integrating with businesses like Syncro. So if you do want to leverage Pax8 and Syncro together, as Crystal mentioned, you can simply add the Pax8 marketplace to your Syncro web portal. And there's a good video explaining how to do this. I also would encourage you to maybe hop on a screen share with one of our engineers at Pax8, and we'd be happy to walk you through this. Really through kind of these weird times of lately, my team's helped MSPs a lot with communication and security implementations. And because everyone's working remote, it's kind of changed the threat landscape quite a bit. And we need to now sort of change our approach on how we're protecting the end users. So one significant difference is that our endpoints are no longer sitting behind that high-end grade firewall appliance. They're connecting to the internet through consumer grade routers that really weren't designed with security in mind to begin with. And because these endpoints are no longer living on the same local network, it creates a lot of challenges around visibility and deployment and like patching. So it's a really good argument to leverage tools like Syncro's RMM Windows patch management or a third-party application patch management, where you don't need to like VPN into somewhere to even have that visibility. So one thing that does seem clear is this sort of change in threat landscape is likely not going to change the cyber criminals business model. We're going to continue to see a ton of phishing attacks and use of stolen credentials. It'll be really interesting to see like Verizon and Symantec's annual threat reports at the end of this year and see how much that's changed since 2019. We're also likely going to continue to see cyber criminals target MSPs, PSA, and RMM tools, which is particularly scary. They'll basically try to get into there and get a foothold into downstream customers. and likely deploy ransomware attacks. So now's a really good time to make sure you get your own house in order and really double check that your internal tools are secure. One thing that we've seen a lot of lately are COVID-related phishing attack emails. These are kind of social engineering typical scams, but what I would recommend is finding a way to respond to that well. So there are products out there that will even allow end users to report suspected phishing attacks. So for example, there's a really cool email security product out of Israel called Iron Scales that will add a little Outlook plugin button to your Outlook. And when a user suspects they've received an unusual or suspicious email, they can just click that button. It will alert an administrator to look at it closer to where they can comb through the headers or do their due diligence. And from even that Iron Scales portal, they can decide if they want to pull that email or not from the user's mailbox. So, I mean, that's kind of one way to handle this, but there's a lot of things that we can do to sort of help protect our end users, certainly as they work from home. And it might even start with the simple things like making sure your end users aren't using the default passwords on their routers and making sure everything's up to date with like Syncro's RMM patch application software.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Kevin. I think that's really great information for everybody to have. Absolutely. I think one thing that, if you guys don't mind, what I might do, I'm just going to share my screen just really quickly here. I'm going to show everyone the Syncro dashboard. And I think it's just worth just going to an invoice really quick because, again, I think actually what I want to do, I did create this before we started. I'm going to launch this poll because I am kind of curious where everyone is at in their journey with both Syncro and Pax8, because I never know in these webinars how far to show Syncro. Maybe you've been using it for years. I'm not sure. So since I don't actually know, I think it's worth just showing a few things. I'm going to go to a reoccurring invoice because I'm using those terms. Kevin's using those terms. Adam is going to use those terms. So I just want to show you what a reoccurring invoice looks like in Syncro. So I'm just going to, I created a reoccurring invoice here. Again, you can see how often you want to be billing, if you're billing in arrears or in advance. We've got some lovely settings, a lot of dynamic counters, but really what you're doing is you're linking those products in Pax8 to your inventory items in Syncro. And so you have your reoccurring line item here for Office 365, for example. So when those license counts change on the Pax8 side, I think there's just like a setting that you can have it automatically update that reoccurring invoice. So it is seamless. It is so easy to use, save you a ton of time on billing. And again, you can see we've got different line item type counters as well. So outside of Pax8, Syncro has the ability to do dynamic counts per endpoint, per contact, per policy, that kind of thing. I just wanted you to have a visual so that when we continue to talk about this integration, you'll kind of have an idea. In addition to that, Kevin also mentioned if you head to the Pax8 tab, this is what we mean by there is an iframe just built right into Syncro. So you can sign into your Pax8 console from Syncro. You don't even have to leave. So just another way that this just saves you a ton of time. Okay, cool. Thanks for filling that form out. That's awesome. It looks like there's a lot of folks here that are already utilizing the integration, which is really great. So I'll be interested to hear kind of what kind of questions we have. So I'll go ahead and awesome. That's really good. Thank you everyone for filling that out. So I think now I really would love, unless Kevin, if you've got some more things to cover, we can maybe kind of.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing quickly. It's something that honestly Pax8's been preaching for a while, but it certainly has kind of sped up with COVID concerns. But we do heavily lean onto the NIST cybersecurity framework and really encourage our partners to do the same. It might seem a little daunting at first, the first time you look at it, but I mean, to summarize it, it's basically a guide that helps really the private sector manage their security risks. So it combines like industry standards and best practices so you can prioritize and respond and really know where your gaps in security are. So you can think of it kind of like a threat modeling exercise. I'm sure you've seen like the 5 functions of NIST. It's usually in sort of a pinwheel display. Each of those functions have categories and subcategories, but you would end up evaluating your business as well as your customers' businesses and creating a profile, which then you can use to compare to industry standard profiles as well as sort of map progress. So I apologize for talking so much security, but it's kind of my passion, and that's like what I came into Pax8 to do. And next thing you know, I got a team now, so it's something that's pretty fascinating to me for sure.
I think that's, and I think it's really important, especially now. So I appreciate you kind of hitting that. And there was, there is a question in the Q&A now, just asking, how is Pax8 and Syncro protecting their own platforms? And so
Sure.
It's worth just saying, we take security at the highest of level. We have a full, dedicated members of the team that are constantly monitoring the security of our platform. So I'm sure Pax8 does the same.
Yeah. I mean, really, like anything else, it very much comes down to tools and processes. Leveraging multi-factor authentication is really critical these days. But on top of that, it's important to really perform proper onboarding and offboarding practices for your own MSP business. So there's not a bunch of rogue accounts in there that maybe have privileges they shouldn't. Just kind of proper security hygiene should at least help. But yeah, it's something that needs to be taken very seriously for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I would love to just hear a little bit from Adam, and maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of your journey. I'm curious. I mean, I know the story, so I'm not gonna pretend like I don't know the story, but curious, what were you using before Syncro? What were you doing before you had the Pax8 Syncro integration? Would love to kind of hear your journey.
So for years we had, I think probably all the way back to 2018, we probably identified that the way we were doing it was not as it should be. We were creating undue burden on staff. I had to dedicate basically half of a person's role to billing in general. So while a lot of today's to discuss the marriage of Pax8 and Syncro, real quick, billing in Syncro all by itself, take the Pax8 portion out of it, has been a game changer for us. So we were using FreshBooks when we started back in 2010. And I still recommend FreshBooks to a lot of people on the smaller end if that need to bill time. It's a great platform for tracking and billing time. When you get to the point that we were, by the time we switched in October, we had about 150 clients, and we were sending somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 invoices a month to those clients. The way we were billing was a little funky to begin with. We were billing at mid-month and some other things. So when we switched to Syncro, it streamlined that. But more importantly, the entire process was effectively manual. So while the time from tickets, which at that point we were using Zendesk, the time from tickets was able to be brought into those invoices, everything else had to be done manually. So we could create a recurring invoice with Office 365 licenses, for instance, on it, but everything was manual, everything was disconnected. So you were 100% relying on internal process being followed to get those licenses properly billed. And as any of you that are watching, if you're in the MSP world, processes work great on slow days and on days where, your entire client base isn't shifting to work from home, for instance. But on those days where all of that is happening, processes don't get followed. Your number one goal is to get the people the license they need. And I think in your head, you're like, oh, I'll go back and bill those properly later. And as you might guess, it never happens. And so then on our end, we'd audit our license usage, which again, 150 clients in Office 365. Auditing that is, I mean, it was close to a week-long process. So you have to basically go into every tenant, look at the licenses they had versus what was on the invoice, and then adjust it. There's really no way to go back and make up for the lost revenue. And I would say, this is a guess, it wasn't based on actual numbers, but probably 80% of the time it was us eating the licensing costs, not the client being overbilled. If I could have a choice of which way, I would choose that, because I really don't want to be the company that overbills. But as the person who's paying those bills, not obviously an ideal situation. We figured up during one of our license audits that we were missing out on almost $2,000 a month in billable revenue. So it was kind of a no-brainer to look for a solution. While Pax8, I know, kind of plays nice with all of the big boys, part of what kept us from making that change was we had tried, the ConnectWise route. We looked at it. The implementation cost was just beyond what I knew how to understand and felt comfortable implementing. Plus, when you're in a world where you're using Zendesk and FreshBooks, it's very simple. That doesn't mean it's good or that it's best, but it's very, very simple. Switching to a system like ConnectWise, the cost of just the transition of staff was beyond what I thought we could really bear. And so when I saw that Syncro was launched, I was obviously interested in it. But it was a very kind of green product. It felt like it needed some time. And so I think we waited maybe a year and a half or so after our first demo before we finally did begin our transition. But I mean, since we've made it, there's, as with any platform, there's little things here and there that would be nice to be able to work exactly how we want them. But the kind of top line review is that everything works as it needs to. There are some things that we have to do manually that we wouldn't, but there's solutions coming out for those. One that Crystal and I discussed the other day that now works with Pax8. One of the kind of holes in this scenario is knowing if clients have licenses that are not utilized. I know Pax8 has launched an integration with, I think it's called like Nuvalex or something like that, that lets you see on one screen whether or not that's happening. So that you can close some of those remaining gaps in making sure that the clients are only using the licenses they need. The other thing for us on the Pax8 side that was huge was we had partner access to all of our Office 365 tenants, which is great if you need to add a user, reset a password, change a distribution group, whatever you need to do. What it will not do is let you procure licenses. So the way we were set up, we did not have a CSP. We were being billed by Microsoft for all of our clients' licenses, which I'm not even positive was technically compliant with the EULA, but that's how we were doing it. And we would rebill the licenses. So effectively the same as we're doing now, but just not going through the proper channel to do it. And so if a client needed a new license, needed a quantity change or billing change, you then had to log in as the global admin in like an incognito tab. So like adding an Exchange Plan 1 license, which is now a task that takes all of about 5 seconds. It used to take at least 5 minutes by the time you logged into everything, got the change done, went over to FreshBooks, changed the license count, and then replied back to the staff that you had done it. Now the process, which you can see in the video that Crystal sent, we effectively, we have 2 people in our procurement team. If someone needs a license, they just put a note into our Slack for procurement and say, hey, I need a license for this client. 2 of the people on procurement team open up their Pax8 portal, assign the they procure the license and hit the sync button. It's the last step in the process. To the person in the Q&A that asked if there's an auto sync option, I honestly don't know. The way that we have used the product, we don't need that. So that'll be more of a question probably for Kevin or Crystal. But the way our workflow is basically assign the license, sync to the invoice, and you're done. The other piece that has not been addressed that it's not a game changer unless you have a lot of new licenses. You have some really fast growing clients. But the option to prorate licenses means that you're not leaving any money on the table. So especially like, a week from now, if we have someone request a license on June 3rd In the past, we ate that first month of licensing because, as you can imagine, with our manual billing practices, to then also add a prorate was just, it wasn't worth the $4 to $18. So now it's exactly prorated to the day of the month. For those that haven't set that up, it adds a one-time charge to the recurring invoice in Syncro. And then I don't have to think about it again. The next month that invoice generates, if the client's on auto pay, I get paid. And our clients, as opposed to our old system where they had multiple invoices each month, there wasn't a lot of clarity or connection in how things were working. I have heard firsthand that our clients appreciate kind of the new streamlined system. They have one invoice, it brings all the charges together. We're at the point now that we're so reliant on the system. If Pax8 doesn't have the ability to integrate a product for billing, we don't even consider it. That, apart from our backup offering, that's still kind of an outlier. But anything new, we're definitely, it works well enough that you don't want to do anything that would kind of walk away from it. So I think the other benefit for us on the Pax8 side is we've been introduced to products we wouldn't have otherwise necessarily known about. If you're in a world where you've dealt with Ingram Micro or one of those kind of antiquated, gigantic distribution companies that consider themselves a CSP for some reason, your experience with Pax8 is going to be a lot different. It's not even really comparable. I think I have a comfort level on my side that if Pax8, based on my experience thus far, if Pax8 has integrated the product, it's probably worth considering, which is kind of a nice place to be. So.
Yeah, that's a awesome compliment for Pax8 for sure. Curious. So obviously you mentioned Office 365, the new Velux. What else are you using? And with that, not only what else are you using, but where have you found ways to charge your customers more and essentially make you more money?
I'm actually logging into my portal so I can actually see it. Proofpoint is definitely one that we're using. New Velux is one that we're trialing that we will probably be using soon. Office 365 is by far the standard, or the bulk of what we're doing in Pax8. But we are continuing to kind of evaluate the other solutions as our clients need them. We also have Drop Suite implemented for some Office 365 backup. The one thing we use Wasabi, we haven't yet integrated it for billing. That's coming soon for us. I think the one, you and I discussed this briefly, Crystal, the one thing that does require just a little bit of effort, if I were to have a complaint, it's that not everything bills in the same way. And I think to a certain extent, that's unavoidable because not all the licensing models are the same. But like if I want to confirm that my Proofpoint licenses are up to date and synced, it's a different process than if I want to confirm an Office 365 licenses is up to date and synced. The nice thing, so in both companies' defense, if you need help, as opposed to I'm going to call Syncro, or I guess I'm going to email Syncro, and Syncro is going to tell me to call Pax8, and then I'm going to call Pax8, and Pax8 is going to tell me to call Syncro. That doesn't happen. I think when we set ours up originally, they even facilitated a call with both parties, and we just went through it together. So I can say confidently both teams want this to work, so you're not going to feel like you're stuck in the middle. They both believe in the solution and will help you implement it if it's not straightforward in your experience. It was in ours. So
very kind words. Thank you. And I'll try to address at least that question around sort of check-in dates. We are trying to solve this internally, but basically out of all the vendors that we support, unfortunately, each vendor has different check-in dates. So Proofpoint, maybe I'll take a step back. A lot of the products that we do provide, we try to sell on a usage-based model. So we basically give the MSP the keys to the kingdom for Proofpoint, and they can deploy whatever they want. And then let's say on the 19th of every month, we count up how many licenses they've actually deployed and bill them that exact amount. That makes provisioning very easy, and you never have to go into the portal and order 5 more licenses or 10 more licenses. It's just automatic. The problem with that is Proofpoint as a vendor might require a different check-in date than WebRoot does, or than SentinelOne does, or Bitdefender or something like that. So we are trying to figure out a way to sort of map that all to one date. I don't know how far we've gotten into that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm going to grab a couple of these questions real quick. So Matthew wants to know, Adam, how do you recommend managing users in Syncro that may not have a machine? For instance, Microsoft based, like business basic email only type of users. Do you have any of those?
So what we opted to do was, instead of having the Office 365 licensing sit inside of our stacked up billing, for most of our other products, by the way, we do what I think you're referring to. There's a per user fee that includes everything. When I sat down to think this through, the Office 365 piece was enough of an outlier, and it's disconnected enough from end user assets in a lot of cases that we opted to, we effectively dropped our price by the amount that the Office 365 license would normally be on our per user licensing. And we've allowed our Office 365 now to sit as its own line item. I think that that's going to be a case by case basis. I think there's a case to be made why not doing that would be nice, because for a lot of companies, their Office 365 count could effectively give you the true count of the user base. And if that's how you're billing, then obviously it's going to be really important to keep everything up to date, make sure you deprovision licenses if you're not using them. But in our case, just the way we were set up, that was the route we opted to go in, was to just make it standalone.
Awesome. Another question specifically for you. Are you still using FreshBooks for accounting? If not, what accounting package are you using?
We were never really using FreshBooks for accounting, just because it doesn't really allow you to assign stuff properly to accounts. It's great at tracking time and expense, which is funny because that's kind of the same role that Pax8 now, or I'm sorry, that Syncro now fills. It can capture time and expense, but generally only client-facing expenses are easy to track there. You're not going to, put in your ISP bill for your own company into Syncro. So one of the other changes we made prior to this was we hired a VCFO. Basically, he's a CFO as a service, and he led us to using. We are using Xero, but we do not have it syncing. Does it sync, Crystal? I don't know. Okay. So what we opted to do with him is that for us, it made the most sense that he basically takes some of the raw numbers and reports from Syncro, and then keeps a separate set of books inside of Xero. I know that they can sync. In our case, the level of detail that would allow for wasn't required, but it is an option. That I kind of left that decision to him just based on what he wanted. But that is where we landed. In my experience, the web-based stuff syncs best with the web-based stuff, if that makes sense. So looking at like a QuickBooks type solution, especially a QuickBooks desktop solution, was never really an option for us. It was going to need to be web-based. That being said, I appreciate that Syncro doesn't. FreshBooks continues, especially in their version 2 or whatever you want to call it, the new FreshBooks. They kind of attempt to keep moving towards an accounting package, but they never actually get there. I think my preference, having kind of been on this journey for a while, is to let products do what they're good at. And Syncro is good at being a PSA and RMM. It doesn't need to be your financial package. That being said, I think there is a long way to go. We were asked a question the other day about narrowing down on profitability on certain types of clients. To be completely transparent, I don't have the financial data accessible to do that. And so I think as we continue to grow and move forward, that's a piece we'll be looking for the answer to. Like, how do we, within this specific all-inclusive package that we're selling, like exactly how profitable is it? Syncro takes a guess at some of that. I haven't actually asked the question of how it comes up with the numbers, because sometimes they'll make you scratch your head a little bit for certain clients when you run the reports. But I think there's definitely more ground to cover there on Syncro side as they continue to develop the product.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And reports are definitely high up on the list of things to continue to develop for sure. Just on the same tone of billing, and this might be a Kevin or an Adam question, I'm not sure, but how do you handle sales tax in Pax8? Does Pax8 charge, or do you charge it directly to the customers? We have recently implemented Pax8 and are wondering how others are handling this.
Maybe Adam knows. I can try and ping somebody. I have no idea how we do sales taxes.
And this might actually end up back in your court, Crystal, but as I understand it, the way it works for us is because you're syncing those charges to an invoice, it's going to be dependent on the tax setup of that invoice. And so I think where that can get complicated is if you work like we do in Kansas City on the state line of Kansas and Missouri. They have different laws relating to tax. So what I think we had to opt to do was, I don't know if we created different billable objects for certain things that we bill to, but long story short, all tax is handled on the Syncro side for sure. I think the only exception to that would be if you have it set to have Pax8 do your billing to your clients for you. But I think that's kind of an entirely different scenario.
Yeah, I believe that that's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna grab this one. We've got a question just because there are a few things that overlap just a little bit. So, you know, Pax8 does resell Bitdefender, WebRoot, Syncro integrates with Bitdefender and WebRoot. So I always tell people, and I mean, I'm sure if you've been with Syncro long enough to know we're super low pressure as far as sales go. So usually my response is whatever works best for you, whatever price, if you can get a better price, whatever. One of the main benefits of integrating straight within Syncro is just the ease of deployment. I mean, that in my opinion, you can deploy straight from a policy. It's literally like a check, like turn it on and it deploys. And so I think that as far as the ease of use, but really the other thing that's worth noting too is that WebRoot and Bitdefender specifically, there are a lot of different versions of, like, I know for sure Bitdefender has a gazillion different versions. Gravity Zone accounts have different versions. So Syncro has a very specific version built. So that might also kind of help make your decision as to which way to go. Kevin, do you have anything else on that?
I think you nailed it. Like, I would say buy it from either whatever's more convenient, whatever works for your business. And obviously price shop it, right? If you can get it cheaper from Syncro, that might be the winner. For the most part, all of our products that we sell, we do provide a lot of back-end support. So we not only create documentation, my team specifically will do pre-sales product demonstrations for anyone that is just kind of dipping their toe in the water and want to see what it's like. We'll also do post-sales implementation guidance. We call them onboarding calls. So the first time you buy, you know, Bitdefender or SentinelOne or whatever, you can get on the phone with one of my guys and we'll walk you through the initial deployment. We do really encourage people to leverage and take advantage of NFRs at Pax8. So unfortunately, not all products, but most of our products, we can at least get you X amount of free licenses to play with internally. And I think that's a smart move as a business owner, because you'll get comfortable with the tools that you use internally, which will allow you to support them better for your clientele. And you can also say you eat your own cooking. As far as like the different modules in Bitdefender, there are a lot. Like, you need, I think, ATP to get their EDR. So it might just be worth combing through exactly what you need and aligning that to the right place to purchase it. But yeah, I would say do whatever is convenient and what works best for your company.
Kevin, we've got a couple of questions that I'm going to throw your way, and if you don't want to answer,
I'll try.
It's just, when is Pax8 going to roll out
internationally? Sure. So I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about, number one, but I will say that the efforts are strong, and COVID for sure put a little bit of a slowdown on that measure. We now have leadership designated to be responsible for not only moving us over there, but living there themselves. We've kind of assigned a little bit of a tiger team. We're still trying to figure out how we can provide the same amount of support over there as we do in the US. And some of that might just be my team needs to work some weird hours. But I do know that we at least have, I think, our currency in line now for supporting the euro and the pound. And I'm sorry to say it's just a matter of time. I don't know when. Hopefully soon. I can't wait. I did see that one of the questions even specifically mentioned South Africa. I believe the current plan, and I might be speaking a little out of turn, but I believe the current plan is to look into Western Europe first and then expand east from there. So probably, I know John Street loves Singapore for some reason. So maybe like APJ and EMEA and Africa will come after that.
Awesome. Sorry to throw you. Just figured I'd ask. Curious, Adam, if you want to take a stab at this, because obviously you were doing something different before, but the question is, if you could just estimate, how long does it normally take someone to get set up with a Syncro and Pax8 integration? For example, we use Tech Data, which isn't integrating with anything. We resell Office 365 and Azure. Can all that be automated with Pax8 and Syncro?
I don't know exactly what they mean by automate, but billing wise, yes. So, and I saw we can probably touch on another question that I saw at the same time. So in our experience, any license you can procure through Microsoft, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but by and large, any license we were procuring through Microsoft on the Office 365 or Azure front, we can procure through Pax8. And so that includes the nonprofit licensing, as long as that client has the nonprofit licensing designation in their Office 365 tenant. Where Pax8 was awesome, they went way above and beyond what I had expected, especially after dealing with and talking to some of these older school companies, was they helped me generate some reports to pull all of my tenant IDs into one platform. This may have been made easier these days, but what we did from there was we went through a process that allowed their third-party connector, which is called Arrow, access to the tenant. I think there's still a goal someday to make that even more direct than it is now. But basically, you have to get the component into the tenant that they'll show up in the tenant. And at that point, then you're able to provision them into Pax8. And licensing, with rare exception, is usually available in a matter of minutes. You add the license. If there are issues, you'll generally know about them. They'll tell you that the licensing is down, or if you submit a ticket for stuff like that, the response is almost immediate. Like Office, because sometimes Microsoft's inbound API has issues. I think in our entire time using the integration, it's been maybe, a few hours here and there. But other than that, you just have to have the Pax8 connector authorized. It will allow you to dual license, so the cutover is actually more seamless than it would seem. So for a period of short time, generally a few hours, you'll have twice the number of licenses you'll need in the Office 365 side. But as soon as you terminate those licenses with your current CSP, Tech Data, I think you said, as soon as those are terminated, then the licensing count returns to the true number. And the best part is at no point do the end users notice anything. There will be, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of heavy lifting to get the switch done if you have a lot of clients. And scripting can help with some of that, but it's worth it. So for us, it was kind of one of those moments where you just had to kind of realize that the journey was going to be worth it and just spend the time. Because once it's done, the savings are immense from a time standpoint.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna grab one, and then I've got another one for you, Adam. It says, "We love Syncro," coming from Autotask. Awesome, Nick. Do you have more integrations on board? Things like Acronis, Sophos, and it's just saying a lot of MSPs have many different AVs, and you can see that in the integrations with Syncro. So I think this is kind of an interesting scenario where, like, we have 3 antiviruses that we integrate with. We do have an integration with MSP 360, or formerly known as Cloudberry. I think we have some things in the works possibly there. I think this is kind of a unique opportunity because although we don't organically integrate with any other AVs right now, you know, this is a use case to still utilize the integration with Pax8. And you could, you know, use Pax8 as your provider, and then Syncro has one heck of a scripting engine. And so we have so many Syncro users, because like you're saying, we have people using Sophos, SentinelOne, a ton of different antiviruses, and they're using our phenomenal scripting engine to deploy that straight from the policy. So there's definitely ways to still make this super efficient and convenient for you. So I would definitely look into that. The one I was going to pass on to Adam, how does Firefly actually get the Syncro RMM agent on the user's device? Do you host the link to the agent somewhere and leave it up to the end user for installation, or do you install the agent when setting up a new device?
I love when people answer multi-part questions with yes, but that's the answer is yes. So at the beginning, we had been using SolarWinds in Central. And so we kind of looked through exactly what that would allow for from a licensing standpoint, whether or not they cared if we used it to deploy the software. What we ended up discovering was that there was nothing preventing us from using Screen Connect, deploying Screen Connect through N-Central. Whether or not we could deploy our new RMM and stay legally compliant was a question mark, so we didn't do that. And I guess to make it clear, we do license Screen Connect separately and integrate it with Syncro. The integration works great. When it doesn't, there's some simple fixes that will fix it generally. Once you go through that once, you kind of know what it is. Generally, it's just editing the asset, refreshing the policy, and a few minutes later, Screen Connect shows up. I say all of that because Screen Connect makes it incredibly easy to pull an MSI file from the web. So our option was we deployed Screen Connect to every device we had in our previous RMM. I then ran a script against all devices, and I hosted the MSI on our web host for a few moments for each client. I had an MSI sitting there. So I would write a script for each client. I would call out MSI exec/I with the full MSI link. It's a pretty small installer, so it didn't take long at all to download it. Users didn't generally even notice. All of a sudden, they have the little Firefly icon in their dock, and away we go. For new clients that we don't already have set up, we'll give them the EXE installer a lot because that makes it really easy to see what's happening. We'll send them a link to it, or I did buy a program, one of those remote installers. I'd have to go back and look at what it was, but there's several programs that if you have common credentials on every machine on the network, it'll crawl the network for you and install it. Or obviously if you have AD, it makes it even easier. We have used that a few times as well. I think part of the question that they're probably trying to ask is there some magic tool that'll deploy it to the network? And that's going to be on Syncro side. I hope that comes someday because it is helpful. But every environment's so different. I can see where it's difficult to develop kind of a one-size-fits-all deployment. So
awesome. I think there's a couple here that I don't have the answer for, but I'm going to read this one out loud from Chuck. We bill some smaller customers with smaller quantities annually and others monthly. Within the Pax8 line items, you choose monthly annual billing, but binds to one Syncro line item. Is there a way to fix the pricing of the Syncro line item for monthly versus annual billing?
I don't know the answer to that. Like I know we generally do monthly billing, but we can do annual billing. However, I'm not really sure what happens with that integration over to Syncro. I don't know if Adam, you've ran into annual billing.
So in our experience, the limitation was quarterly billing. So we can procure the licenses in a manner that makes them a yearly cost as opposed to a monthly cost. Those licenses existed, or those SKUs, if you will. What we did not find a solution for was quarterly. And so we opted to, I think we had 3 clients out of the whole stack that were billing quarterly, and we asked them if they cared. You know, if we move you to auto billing to credit card, do you care if you either move to yearly or monthly? And no one did. If someone had answered a different way, I'm not completely certain how we would have handled that. But I think that's probably, if I am indeed correct, when we're all able to go back and look, I think it would definitely be worth a feature request kind of on both sides. It would, I think the shortfall or the limitation might be that I'm not sure Pax8 would have to create a SKU for quarterly billing. I'm not positive Microsoft would let them, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't know exactly how that would work. But I do know that monthly or quarterly are options.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that if you just select the annual option in Pax8 and then your reoccurring invoice is set on an annual basis, then it should sync up just fine, if I understand that correct. There was another kind of question kind of similar to that. If we have a Syncro product that contains 3 items from the Pax8 catalog, will it sync 3 to 1 or only 1 to 1 products? I thought it was 1 to 1, but I wanted to.
I'm pretty sure it's 1 to 1, which can be a challenge if you have your stack, set up. So I think one of the options is to choose one of the products and only sync that product, because the end goal is to get your pricing set properly for the full stack. So if every user is getting these 3 items, you just need to sync one of them. Of course, you're going to have to kind of have internal processes for that, because the one way we do check ourselves is to go to those unsynced subscriptions, and it will show you things that have had a change that haven't been synced. So knowing what to disregard from that report would be important if that's the way you go. But that's, unless it's going to be like at a single company, this user has 1 of the 3 products, this user has 2 of the 3 products, and this user has all 3. At that point, I think you're going to be 1 to 1 syncing each of them. That being said, I think that while it's convenient to have the one price for everything, sometimes it has helped us to help people understand how we get to our pricing when maybe we propose it as a package, but when they see the invoice, it breaks it down. I think in some cases it makes our billing more defendable because they see the cost of each item and we can defend it directly. But everybody's kind of setup's different. So.
Yeah, and I also wondered too, like instead of it being necessarily 3 to 1, having it where it's named something in Syncro, but the description does describe all 3 of the products, to maybe limit the space on a reoccurring invoice, to try, if that's kind of what you're trying to achieve too. Let's see here. A quick question just in regards to Syncro and updates on monitoring SNMP. So definitely on our list and to work on, probably one of our highest requested features. So definitely we're working to get back to that for sure. Let's see here. If you guys see anything in the queue that you want to answer, I don't think you're using WebRoot through Pax8, Adam, but maybe Kevin knows. Does usage-based information sync to Syncro like WebRoot DNS? Do you know?
Yeah, so like Adam kind of touched on this earlier. Basically how WebRoot would work, or any of our usage-based licensing model products, is unfortunately each vendor is going to have a slightly different day, but let's say WebRoot checks in with Pax8 on the 19th of each month. So it'll count up how many licenses you've deployed across your customer base. At that point, then it should sync over to Syncro. And I think we would bill on like the 5th later, but it's not going to sync until that check-in date once a month. So at that point, then it would run over to Syncro. Same thing with Proofpoint or Bitdefender. We try to do as many usage-based licensing products as possible, just out of convenience for the MSPs. Hopefully that answered the question. I think that's what they were getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Crystal. Derek, I think I'd answered your question via text. But I think the point is that in your internal system, so he asked, what if the billing person doesn't know there's a change? His previous question was, do you have to sync these every month to get them onto the invoice? The answer is no, at least not the way we use it. So we kind of assume that if somebody has 8 licenses this month and they didn't hire anyone else, then next month they'll have 8 licenses again. And so what the integration has done is it's created a recurring item on that invoice for that license at quantity 8. Until there is a change, it stays at quantity 8. If you would need to kind of figure out your own workflow if you have a separate billing person or team. But the way it works for us is that the procurement team syncs that subscription so that when that invoice fires off on the 1st of next month, the new quantity is ready along with the prorated amount from the previous month. So there's no manual aspect to, at least if we're referring to like Office 365, there's no manual aspect to it at all if you already have a recurring invoice set up. So in our case, to kind of give you the full picture, Crystal showed the recurring invoices earlier. We have a recurring invoice for every client that has any sort of proactive service. So whether or not we're going to bill them anytime or whether or not they're all inclusive, they have a recurring invoice if they're going to, if we sell them anything. So that recurring invoice for some clients, if all they're doing is buying Office licenses or AV licenses or whatever, that's all that's on it. If they're a client that we still bill time to, we have the checkbox set to add pending charges to that ticket. So if there were any tickets that had expense or time, those also get added to the ticket or to the invoice with no interaction by us. And then finally, any changes from a licensing standpoint also get added with no interaction by us beyond procuring the license and hitting sync. When you hit sync, it actually shows you kind of a preview of the invoice, shows you the line item, shows you the price. You don't have to charge everyone the same thing for the licenses. One of the updates I've appreciated I think this was probably more on Pax8 side, but it used to be that it would honor the pricing that I had in Syncro, but on the Pax8 side, it would show the list pricing. And so you were always like, I hope this bill's the right amount. Now, when it does its sync and it does the API lookup, you'll see the list price for like half a second, and then it flips to the price that you have on your invoice. That being said, you can also edit it on either side. So there's clients that we charge list price, there's clients we charge more. It kind of depends on the arrangement and what's been discussed, but it kind of works for all those scenarios.
That's awesome. Yeah, really good information too. We're running low on time. There's 2 questions I'm just going to grab because they're pretty quick ones. One is, we use ConnectWise. How does Syncro help the sync, or would it replace ConnectWise? So yeah, Syncro is a replacement of ConnectWise, and ConnectWise has a lot of different options, of course, but Syncro is a full RMM and PSA embedded. So it could actually replace your full PSA and RMM. And then it asks, Scott asks, what requirements are there to bring Pax8 products into Syncro, and what happens if we have a product similar to that in Pax8 already? What's actually cool is you can import, right? So I think that you can import, there's like an import option from Pax8 to Syncro's products and services. And then also, even if they don't match up perfectly, you can still like map them to match. So as far as requirements, I'm not really sure if there are like specific requirements. You can import and you can sync up. So we make that really easy. And again, if you see, I did post all of those links. But since we are winding down, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself. It's just crystal@syncromsp.com if you do have any additional questions. This is recorded. We will post this on our YouTube channel. But I just want to take a quick second. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate your time. This has been great. And thank you all for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.